The darkness was endless. Private Daniel Reeves' eyes snapped open. There was nothing to sunlight, no shadows, no horizon, only blackness. He lay on cold stone, his arms aching, his body heavy as though it had been chained for days. The silence should have been complete, but it wasn't. Somewhere in the void, faint voices whispered. Not human voices, these were deeper, twisted, their syllables bending in ways the human tongue could not. They rose and fell like the crackle of fire, harsh and alien. And beneath those voices came the rattle of chains, dozens of them clinking together in rhythm with something that sounded like breathing. Daniel froze, his heart hammering. He whispered into the dark, "Is anyone there?" No reply came. The faint shuffle of bodies and a chorus of quiet, broken groans. He realized then he was not alone in this prison, and yet he was the only human. Slowly, memory returned. The ambush. Firefight. His squad overwhelmed on a nameless colony world. He remembered the screams as alien shock troops descended, their weapons cutting through armor as though it were paper. He remembered the last order from his captain. Run. Get clear. But he hadn't. And now he was here. Daniel pushed himself upright, his muscles stiff. His wrists ached. He felt iron bands pressing into his skin. Shackles. He tugged them once and heard the heavy rattle echo into the dark chamber. Suddenly movement. A spark of light flickered in the distance, like a lantern being lit. Then another. Torches, Daniel realized. Alien guards were entering. Shapes appeared tall, insect-like beings with armored plates instead of skin. Their eyes glowed a sickly yellow, their mouths filled with jagged mandibles. Each carried a spear that buzzed with energy. They walked in silence, except for the clank of their clawed feet. Their shadows spread across the walls, huge and monstrous. And Daniel noticed something else. Rows of figures, pressed against the walls. Prisoners. Dozens of them. No hundreds. Their eyes reflected the torchlight. They were not human. Scaled creatures, furred ones, feathered ones, each beaten, broken, and chained. They looked at him as though he were a ghost. Why him? I keep one human alive among so many. Alien captives? The guards stopped at the center of the chamber. Two of them hissed at each other in their strange tongue. Daniel didn't understand the words, but the meaning was clear. They were arguing. One gestured at him violently. Another shook his head. Finally, a taller warden stepped forward. Its armor gleamed with silver marks of rank. The commander. It pointed at Daniel. Its mandibles clicked as it spoke, its voice echoing. Through the chamber like breaking glass, every alien prisoner lowered their gaze. Daniel clenched his fists, anger boiling despite his fear. "What are you waiting for?" he shouted. "If you're going to kill me, then do it." His words echoed. The prisoners shifted uncomfortably. The guards hissed, but the commander did not kill him. Instead, it leaned closer, its glowing eyes studied him, cold and calculating, as if Daniel were some rare insect pinned to a board. Then it clicked its mandibles once more and turned away. The torches dimmed, the guards withdrew, and the human was left alive. Arzor days passed. Could not tell. Time meant nothing in the endless dark. He drifted in and out of restless sleep, haunted by memories of his squad of their last stand. His body shook with hunger. His throat burned with thirst. And always he felt the stares of the other prisoners. Then, one night, as silence pressed heavy over the chamber, a voice whispered close to his ear, "You should not be here." Daniel's head snapped up. He searched the dark, his pulse racing. The voice continued. It was accented, but strangely familiar. "They do not keep humans alive. Never. Yet you breathe. Do you know why?" Daniel swallowed hard. "Who's there?" A faint shimmer appeared, a tall figure cloaked in ragged cloth stepping out from the shadows between the cells. Its eyes glowed faint blue. It was not human, but humanoid, its features sharp, its skin like pale stone. One of the alien prisoners, but not chained. Daniel's voice cracked. "How are you free?" The figure glanced at the walls, as though afraid of being overheard. "I am not free. I am forgotten, like you. But unlike you, I know why they spared you. Then tell me, Daniel whispered. The figure leaned close, its voice low and urgent. Because long ago, a human saved me. The figure revealed itself fully. It's not a prisoner at all but one of the alien guards. Its armor was old and cracked. Its mandibles scarred. It's unlike the others. Its eyes did not glow with malice, but with something else. Memory, regret. My people once fell to war, it said. We were dying, and then humans came. They lifted us from ashes, gave us water, gave us light. I swore a debt, a life for a life. When I saw them bring you here, I remembered. Daniel stared in disbelief. You saved me. The guard nodded. But I cannot protect you long. They will return. They debate now whether to dissect you or display you as a trophy. Daniel's chest tightened. He was nothing to these creatures but a prize, a relic of war. The guard knelt, placing a claw against Daniel's shackles. A spark of energy flickered. The iron bands fell away. Daniel staggered, free for the first time in days. He could hardly stand. The guard's voice was sharp. Must leave now. Follow me. Do not speak. Do not look back. They moved through dark corridors, lit only by pale green fires. The walls dripped with slime. Every step echoed. Daniel's heart pounded with fear any moment the other guards could appear. Twice, they ducked into alcoves as patrols marched past. Once, Daniel nearly stumbled over a pile of bones remains of those who had not been spared. The guard urged him forward.
Faster.
The gates are near. Finally, they reached a massive doorway. A crack of light bled through. It on Daniel shielded. His eyes. He had not seen light in so long it burned. The guard pushed the gate open. Go. This is where my debt ends. Daniel stepped through. The light blinded him at first. He staggered into the open air, gasping as fresh wind struck his face. His eyes adjusted slowly, and then he froze. Before him stretched a vast courtyard surrounded by iron walls, and within it thousands of alien prisoners. All of them stared at him, scaled beings with broken wings, furred creatures with hollow eyes, giants chained at the ankles, small insect-like children huddled together. All of them turned as one. They stared at him, the only human in sight. The silence was crushing. Daniel's mouth went dry. His heart thundered. He felt the weight of every gaze upon him. Thousands of souls, beaten and broken, now looking to him as if he were something. More than just a soldier, as if he were hope. He whispered, almost to himself, "Why me?" But no answer came.
House.
Only the heavy silence of countless prisoners watching and waiting. The human stumbled forward, shackles clattering to the ground. As thousands of alien eyes followed his every step, he was the forgotten prisoner. And now, for reasons he could not yet understand, he was the center of their attention. The courtyard was silent. Daniel stood trembling, his chains still clattering against the stone. Before him, thousands of alien prisoners stared. Not one spoke, not one moved. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dim torchlight, some filled with fear, others with confusion, and some with hatred. He felt their whispers before he heard them. Low voices spread through the crowd like waves crashing against stone. Why him? One muttered, a human? Another hissed, they saved him. Possible. The voices grew louder, sharper. Daniel felt the pressure of 1,000 questions he could not answer. Then suddenly a roar of anger came from the far side of the courtyard. A tall reptilian prisoner stood, chains dragging at his ankles. His scales glistened red under the torchlight. He pointed one clawed finger at Daniel. Why does he walk free while we rot in chains? The crowd stirred, restless. Others joined the cry. Yes. Why the human? Why save one of them? He should not be here. The noise grew, rattling through the prison yard until it felt like the walls themselves might break. Daniel's throat tightened. He raised his hand slowly. Wei Tai didn't ask for this. I don't even know why I'm alive. But the voices kept rising, a storm of suspicion. The prisoners pressed closer, their eyes burning with old anger. And then, from the shadows, the guard who freed him stepped forward. The crowd fell silent at once. The alien guard stood tall, its cracked armor glinting faintly in the firelight. Its mandibles clicked as it spoke not to Daniel, but to the prisoners it spoke in their language, words Daniel could not understand. But the tone was sharp, commanding. The reptilian prisoner growled back in defiance. Others hissed their protests. Guard raised its spear and slammed it against the ground. Sparks flew. The sound silenced the courtyard. Then, switching to broken human speech, the guard said, "This one is spared. His life is chosen. A debt repaid." Daniel's brow furrowed, glanced at the crowd. "A debt? What are you talking about?" Guard turned to him, eyes glowing with cold fire. "Long ago, humans saved my people. When war burned us to ash, your kind lifted us up. I was young, I remember. Today I return the debt." Daniel shook his head, trying to process. "You risked everything. For me?" The guard's mandibles clicked. "One life for one life. But now all prisoners see. They will not forget. They will not forgive." The weight of those words hit hard. Around him, alien eyes still burned with mistrust. He was alive because of a promise made long before he was born. But to the others, he was not a symbol of hope. He was a symbol of favoritism, the choice of one, against the suffering of many. Hours passed, but the tension never faded. Wherever Daniel walked in the courtyard, eyes followed. Whispers trailed him like shadows. Some prisoners spat at his feet, others turned their backs, and some simply stared, silent and unblinking. Daniel sat against the cold wall, hunger gnawing at him. His body ached, but his mind burned worse. Why me? Why only me? He thought of his squad, of Earth, of the countless battles where humans had stood together. And now here he was, lone. Saved when others were not. The guard appeared again, kneeling beside him. "You do not eat, you do not sleep?" Daniel looked up, anger flashing. "How can I? They all hate me. I don't even know why I'm here." The guard's eyes narrowed. "Because fate chooses strange paths. Perhaps you live because you must carry a message." Daniel frowned. "What message?" The guard did not answer. Instead, it rose and walked back into the shadows, leaving Daniel with more questions than before. That night, the prisoners gathered in circles, whispering among themselves. The tension was thick, like a storm about to break. Daniel tried to stay hidden. But the reptilian prisoner from before approached, his chains dragged loudly, his presence heavy and dangerous. "You," the reptilian growled, "why are you here? Why does the guard risk his life for a human?" Daniel stood slowly, meeting his fiery gaze. "I don't know. I didn't ask him to." The reptilian leaned close, his teeth bared. "Then know this: if they spared you while we die, then you will never be one of us. You are a curse, a reminder of what we lost." His words cut deep. Daniel wanted to argue, to scream back. Deep inside, he wondered if the alien was right. Why save one when so many were suffering? The next morning, the wardens returned. This time, more of them. Their armor gleamed, their weapons humming with deadly power. The prisoners were herded into lines, their chains clanking as they shuffled forward. Daniel felt rough claws shove him into place. The commander spoke, its voice harsh, commanding. Gestured to Daniel, then to the crowd. The guard beside Daniel translated in a low whisper. "They debate your fate. Some want you executed. Some want you studied. Some want you caged forever." Daniel's chest tightened. He looked at the sea of faces around him, fear, pain, hatred, all staring at him. The commander barked something. Two guards stepped forward, aiming their spears at Daniel's chest. The prisoners murmured, restless. Some looked away. Some leaned forward, eager. Daniel closed his eyes, bracing for the end. But then the alien guard who had freed him stepped between Daniel and the spears. The courtyard gasped. The guard's voice rang out, strong and defiant. "No. This human lives. My life bound to his. My honor demands it." The commander hissed in fury. The two guards hesitated, their weapons trembling. The crowd erupted in whispers again. Some shouted in anger. Others, in shock. Daniel's heart pounded. He didn't understand the words, but the meaning was clear. This guard was putting everything on the line for him. The commander roared. Spear struck the ground. Tension filled the air, ready to snap. Finally, after what felt like forever, the commander spat a sharp order. The guards lowered their weapons. Daniel was spared again. But this time, it was not just survival. It was open rebellion. That night, Daniel sat at the edge of the courtyard, his mind racing. The prisoners no longer looked at him with only hatred. Now, there was something else in their eyes, fear. Not of him, but of what he represented. One guard had chosen to save him. One alien had broken the chain of obedience, and thousands of prisoners had witnessed it. As the torches burned low, Daniel realized something terrifying. This was no longer about him. The moment that guard defied its commander, a spark had been lit. A spark that could burn the whole prison down, or the whole galaxy. And in the silence of the courtyard, Daniel felt it. The weight of 1,000 alien eyes, waiting, watching, judging. And he knew his life was no longer his own. The night. Air was sharp and cold. Daniel sat in the shadows of the prison yard, staring up at the faint stars above. They twinkled weakly through the iron bars of the dome. So far away, they seemed like lies painted across the sky. He thought of home, of Earth, of his squad, all gone. And yet somewhere out there, his people still lived. Somewhere humanity was still fighting, still breathing, but here. In this pit of chains and whispers, he was alone, or so he thought. A low hum began to ripple through the prison. Faint at first, then louder. It wasn't the sound of chains or whispers. It was mechanical, like a machine awakening. Daniel's head snapped up. Across the yard he saw it, a half-broken console flickering with pale green light. It was old, rusted but alive. A communication relay. His heart hammered. If I could reach it, if I could send even one signal, Earth might hear me. But then he froze. Around the console, alien guards marched, their weapons sparking, their mandibles clicking in sharp rhythm. The chance was there, the only chance he might ever get. And to reach it meant risking everything. As Daniel stared, the alien guard who had freed him approached quietly from the shadows. Its scarred mandibles clicked in a low voice. "You see it?" the guard said. Daniel nodded. "That consulate can reach Earth, can't it?" The guard hesitated, its glowing eyes narrowing. "Perhaps. It is old. Forbidden. It connects to the stars. But if you touch it, the wardens will kill you before the first word is spoken." Daniel clenched his fists. "Then I have to try." The guard tilted its head. "You do not understand. Even if you reach your people, even if they hear, they will not come for one. The human homeworld is far, too far. They will not risk war for a single life." Daniel's voice hardened. "They won't come for one. But if they know what's happening here, if they know about all of you, then maybe they'll come for everyone." The guard's mandibles twitched. Its eyes flickered with doubt. "You would risk your life for strangers, for those who hate you?" Daniel looked across the yard at the prisoners. Some glared, some turned away, but many just sat in silence, hollow-eyed, broken. "Yes," Daniel said softly, "because if we don't stand for each other, then none of us stand at all." The guard stared at him for a long moment. Then it leaned close, whispering, "Then we must move before the sun's rise." The yard was quiet when the moment came. The torches burned low. The guards marched slower, their attention fading. Daniel and the scarred guard crept along the shadows, staying close to the walls. His heartbeat was thunder in his ears. Every step was a risk. Every sound could mean death. At last, they reached the console. It was ancient. It's built of alien stone and steel. its surface cracked but still pulsing with faint light. Strange symbols glowed across its symbols Daniel did not understand. He swallowed. Hard. Can you work it? The guard nodded slowly. I will open the channel. But you must speak quickly. The signal will be traced. You will not survive long if they hear. Daniel stepped forward. His hands shook as he touched the cold surface. The console hummed louder, lights flickering to life. A thin beam shot into the sky, piercing through the dome, as if clawing toward the stars. The guard barked, "Speak now." Daniel's throat tightened. For a second, the words would not come. What could he possibly say that would make Earth listen? Then he drew in a deep breath. "This is Private Daniel Reeve of Earth's Colonial Defense. I am alive. Repeat, I am alive. I am held prisoner in the Jari slave camps." He hesitated, then added, "I am not alone. Thousands are here. Not just humans, dozens of species. Enslaved, tortured. They saved me when they should not have. I don't know if you can hear this. I don't know if anyone is listening, but if you are, we need you. We need Earth. Please." The words cracked with desperation. His voice shook. But he spoke them anyway, because it was all he had left. He hit the console hard, sending the signal out again and again, each pulse echoing into the void. Then the console went dark. The signal was sent, and the silence that followed was deafening. It lasted only seconds. Then the prison shook with a roar. Alarms blared, shrill and piercing. Red light flooded the yard. The wardens had detected the signal. Guards poured in from every gate, weapons raised. Their mandibles clicked furiously as they surged toward the console. The scarred guard shoved. "Daniel, back! Run!" Daniel stumbled, his legs weak, his chest heaving. He turned, sprinting toward the shadows.
Oh.
Behind him, sparks flew as weapons struck stone. The ground trembled. But then an alien voice bellowed. Not a guard, a prisoner. Reptilian, who had hated him most, roared. He carries the message. Protect him. Chains clattered as prisoners surged forward. Some leaped onto guards, dragging them down. Others blocked the path, raising broken tools and rocks as weapons. The yard erupted into chaos. Daniel ran, the scarred guard at his side. Weaving through fire and smoke as the prison became a battlefield, they reached the far wall. Daniel leaned against it, gasping for air. The scarred guard stood tall, its spear glowing, ready to fight. "You sent it," the guard said. "The stars will carry your words." Daniel nodded, his voice breaking. "But will Earth hear? Will they come?" The guard's mandibles clicked softly. "That is not for us to know. All we can do is wait." Before Daniel could reply, the wall behind them shook violently. A massive explosion tore through the courtyard. Prisoners screamed. Guards roared. The scarred guard pushed Daniel through. A narrow passage. "Go, live. My debt is paid." Daniel turned. "No, be killed?" The guard's eyes glowed faintly. "Better me than you. Humanity must know." And then it shoved Daniel forward. Daniel stumbled into the open night, smoke billowing behind him. For the first time, he was outside the prison walls. The air was colder, sharper, filled with ash and fire. He turned, watching as chaos consumed the prison. Prisoners fought guards. Slaughtered, flames rising into the black sky and through the smoke. The faint beam of the signal still burned upward, piercing the heavens. Daniel's hands shook. His voice cracked as he whispered to the night, "Please, let them hear me." Far above, in the deep silence of space, something stirred. A human fleet receiving a whisper. A commander's eyes widening, single word spoken into the void. After all this time, signal had been heard. Space was silent, not quiet silent, the kind of silence that pressed against the skin, heavy and endless. Stars burned in. The black distance, cold and ancient, watching but never speaking, in that silence. A listening post floated, a lonely station carved from steel and ice. Its crew of alien technicians sat in dim light, scanning for signals, their eyes dull with boredom. Then it came. A whisper. So faint at first they thought it was static. But it grew words, sharp and desperate, breaking through the void. "This is Private Daniel Reeve of Earth's Colonial Defense. I am alive. I am not alone. Thousands are here, enslaved. Tortured, please. We need Earth." The aliens froze. Their antennae twitched. Their screens flared with human code. Unmistakable, undeniable. One technician stammered in panic. "It cannot be. Humanity is gone, broken. They would never return." But the signal kept repeating, pulsing out like a heartbeat across the stars. And in the silence of deep space, something stirred. A shadow, a fleet, far across the void. In the orbit of a quiet blue planet, the call reached Earth Command. Inside, a vast war room lit by holoscreens, generals and admirals gathered in silence. The message echoed once more, Daniel's voice breaking with desperation. The room was tense. No one spoke at first. Then finally a woman in uniform leaned forward. "That's a human voice." Another officer shook his head. "Impossible. Colonies in that sector were lost decades ago. No one could have survived." But the recording played again. "If you can hear this, I am not alone." The commander at the center of the room, an older man with sharp eyes, stood. He clenched his fists slowly, then spoke in a low voice that carried across the chamber. "We swore we would never leave one behind." Silence answered him. Every officer turned to look at him. He continued. "They saved one of ours. That is enough. Ready the fleet." Deep in Earth's shipyards, colossal hangars groaned to life. Engines the size of cities began to hum, their glow burning brighter than suns. Soldiers rushed to stations. Pilots strapped into cockpits. Across the fleet, lights snapped on, one by one, rows of warships awakening from their long sleep. Frigates, destroyers, carriers, and at the center, a dreadnought. Its hull scarred from old wars, but its guns gleaming anew. The commander stepped onto its bridge, staring out at the endless stars. "Set course," he said. "To the Jari prison world. We bring them home." The ship's engines roared, and in an instant, humanity leaped back into the stars. Meanwhile, Daniel crouched in the ruins outside the prison walls. Smoke choked the air. Screams echoed behind him as guards and prisoners clashed in chaos. His chest heaved, his throat burned. He clutched at the dirt, whispering again and again, "Please let them hear, please." The scarred guard's words haunted him. They will not come for one. But Daniel had seen the signal rise into the night sky. He had felt it burn through the stars. Somewhere, somehow, someone had to hear, and then the ground trembled. At first, he thought it was another explosion. But then he saw the prisoners in the yard stop fighting, their faces turning upward. Even the guards froze, their mandibles clicking in alarm. In the sky, a ripple appeared. A distortion, like heat-bending air, then dash light. A flare so bright it split the night apart, one by one. Shadows emerged from hyperspace. Colossal ships with sleek steel hulls, engines glowing blue, weapons bristling along their spines. Human ships. Daniel's. Breath caught in his chest, his eyes blurred with tears. "It came," he whispered. The prisoners stared in silence, awe spreading across their faces. For many, it was the first time they had ever seen a human warship. The guards, however, screamed in panic. Their commanders barked orders, scrambling their defenses. From orbit, the human dreadnought's voice boomed across the atmosphere. "This is the United Earth Fleet, all enslaved peoples. Stand fast. You are not forgotten. You are not abandoned. We are coming." The words thundered across the prison world, and hope was born in the hearts of thousands. The Jari overlords launched their defense. Warships rose from the planet's surface, engines screaming, weapons flashing. The sky turned into fire. Beams of energy ripped across the void. Explosions bloomed like suns. But the human fleet did not break. Frigates darted between enemy lines, unleashing volleys of missiles. Destroyers carved through alien ships with precision fire. The dreadnought's cannons roared, tearing massive cruisers apart with every shot. From the ground, Daniel and the prisoners watched as the sky burned. The night became day, lit by fire and war. The reptilian prisoner beside him whispered in awe, "They came. For you?" Daniel shook his head, voice trembling. "No. They came for all of us." On the bridge of the dreadnought, the commander stood firm. Eyes locked on the prison world below, reports poured in, enemy resistance heavy. Prisoners in revolt, chaos spreading across the camps. An officer turned, worried. "Hey, sir, this will cost us dearly. Do we commit fully? For just one?" The commander's voice was cold, sharp, unwavering. "They saved one of ours. That was enough reason. Now we save them all. Every last one." Dropships broke from the fleet, plunging through the burning sky. Their hulls glowed red as they pierced the atmosphere, engines screaming. Daniel's eyes widened as he saw them fall. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Like a storm of fire raining down from heaven. The prisoners around him began to cry out, not in fear, but in hope. Chains rattled as they rose to their feet. For the first time, their eyes glowed with something other than despair. Hope. The guards panicked, shouting, forcing prisoners back, but it was useless. The tide had shifted. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had returned. The first dropship slammed into the prison yard, its doors exploding open. Human Marines poured out, weapons blazing, armor gleaming under the firelit sky. Daniel staggered forward, tears streaming down his face as he heard them shout, "Colonial defense, get down. We'll get you out." The scarred guard who had saved him limped from the shadows, eyes wide as it saw human soldiers storm the prison. Daniel whispered, voice breaking, "I told you. They'd come." And in that moment, for the first time in years, the prisoners cheered. But above, the sky grew darker, because the Jari overlords were not finished. Their true fleet, colossal endless, was arriving, and the real war was only just beginning. The prison world had always been gray. Gray skies, gray dirt, gray chains. Nothing ever changed until now. Tonight. The sky burned. Daniel staggered through the yard, staring upward as the heavens split in half. Fire rained down from above. Dropships screamed through clouds of smoke, their engines glowing like comets. Behind them, streaks of light-marked missiles and laser fire ripping across the void. The Jari overlords had unleashed their full might. Their fleet poured into orbit, colossal ships blotting out the stars. Their weapons lit the darkness, beams tearing through the atmosphere, turning night into blazing day. Daniel's heart hammered in his chest. Every explosion shook the ground. Every blast threatened to erase them all. The alien prisoners around him stood frozen, faces pale, eyes wide with terror. Some clutched each other. Some dropped to their knees. For so long, the sky had been their cage. Now it was their battlefield, Daniel whispered, voice trembling. "This is it. This is the war." Above, fire consumed the heavens. High above, the prison world, chaos reigned. Human frigates darted between massive enemy cruisers, weaving through storms of plasma fire. Destroyers unleashed volleys of missiles, tearing holes in the Jari lines. Carriers deployed waves of fighters, their wings glowing like swarms of shooting stars. But the Jari were relentless. Their ships were larger, older, built from black stone and steel. They moved like predators, slow but unstoppable, their weapons scorching everything in their path. On the bridge of the human dreadnought, alarms blared. Officers shouted over one another as the ship shook under a near miss. Shields at 60%, enemy cruisers closing on the flank, fighter wings requesting backup. The commander stood firm, gripping the rail with iron hands. His eyes locked on the largest Jari ship, a monstrous vessel bristling with cannons. "Bring us about," he ordered. "Target their flagship. We cut off the head." The dreadnought's engines roared, turning its massive hull toward the heart of the enemy fleet. And then, with a thunderous boom, it fired. Back on the surface, dropships slammed into the prison yard one after another. Their doors burst open, and human Marines poured out, armored and armed, moving in perfect lines. The prisoners gasped. For many, it was the first time they had seen. Human soldiers, living legends, clad in steel. Secure the yard, Marine captain shouted. Form a perimeter. Cover the civilians. Gunfire erupted. Jari guards swarmed from the towers, screeching war cries. Plasma bolts streaked through the air. Marines answered with disciplined bursts, their rifles cracking like thunder. Daniel dove for cover as 2 guards fired at him. Before he could move, a Marine tackled them, blades flashing, cutting them down in seconds. The soldier turned, visor, reflecting firelight, and shouted at him, "You, Daniel Reeve." Daniel's throat closed. He nodded. "Command's been waiting for you." The Marine growled, then grabbed him by the arm. "Stay with us, soldier. You're going home." 4. The first time in years Daniel believed it. Around the yard, the alien slaves hesitated. They had lived in chains for so long. Freedom felt like a dream too fragile to touch. Then a voice rose among them. The reptilian prisoner who had once spoken to Daniel stood tall, scales glowing in the firelight. He lifted broken chains in two the air and roared, "Fight! Fight with them! Tonight we are free!" The yard exploded with sound. Thousands of voices cried out as the prisoners surged forward. They grabbed weapons from fallen guards, ripped chains into clubs, and hurled themselves. Into the battle, the Marines, though startled, shouted in approval. Side by side, humans and aliens fought, tearing the prison apart. Daniel swung a stolen rifle, firing wildly. For every guard that fell, 2 more rose, but the tide was turning, and above, the sky kept burning. In orbit, the human fleet was faltering. The dreadnought's cannons ripped holes through the enemy, but for every Jari ship destroyed, another appeared. The overlords had sent their full armada. Explosions lit the void. Human frigates died in fire. Fighters vanished in bursts of light. On the bridge, officers shouted in panic. "We're losing the flank. Carriers are taking heavy damage." "We can't hold them, sir." The commander's jaw tightened. He knew they could not retreat, not now, not with the prisoners below. He raised his hand, signaled to all ships, "Hold the line. We fight until the last." And across the fleet, weary voices answered, "Yes, sir." The humans did not turn away. They fought on, against impossible odds. Back on the surface, Daniel and the prisoners fought tooth and nail. The yard was chaos, flashes of fire, screams of pain, the clash of steel and plasma. Suddenly, the ground shook violently. Everyone froze. A shadow fell across the battlefield. Daniel looked up, and his blood ran cold. A Jari warship, massive and hulking, was descending from orbit. Its engines tore the clouds apart. Its cannons pointed straight at the prison yard. If it fired, everything, humans, prisoners, everyone would be reduced to ashdot. The Marines shouted in panic, trying to call the fleet for cover. But the human ships above were locked in battle, unable to break free. Daniel's voice cracked as he screamed into the chaos. "We're not going to make it." The ship's cannons began to glow, high above on the bridge of the dreadnought. The commander saw it too. The massive warship charging its cannons, aimed directly at the surface. He knew what had to be done. "Bring us forward," he ordered. The crew turned in horror. "Sir, if we ram them," I know the commander cut in. His voice was steady, almost calm. "Better us than them. Better one ship than thousands of lives below." The dreadnought's engines flared to maximum. Its hull shuddered as it accelerated, straight toward the enemy warship. "Sir," the officer whispered. The commander stood tall, eyes fixed on the glowing cannons. "For Earth. For them all." The dreadnought slammed into the Jari warship with a soundless scream of fire and steel. The explosion lit the sky brighter than the sun. Shockwaves tore through orbit, scattering debris for miles. The enemy ship split apart, its cannons silenced, its engines dying in flame. On the ground, Daniel shielded his eyes as the sky erupted. For a moment, it looked as though heaven itself had fallen. Then silence. The warship was gone, but so was the dreadnought. Daniel fell to his knees, staring at the burning wreckage raining down from orbit. His chest ached. His throat burned. They sacrificed everything, he whispered. Around him, the Marines and prisoners stood in stunned silence, watching the sky flicker with dying fire. Then suddenly, the ground rumbled again. The horizon split with light, because the Jari were not finished beyond the wreckage. Beyond the shattered ships, something darker moved. A ship larger than anything Daniel had ever seen. A fortress the size of a moon emerged from the void. Real enemy had arrived, and the battle had only just begun. The fire from the dreadnought's sacrifice still lingered. Burning fragments of steel fell through the clouds like meteors, sizzling as they struck the earth. The prisoners whispered in awe. The Marines bowed their heads. Daniel stood frozen, his chest still heaving from the battle. But then everything went quiet. Too quiet, the wind stopped. Air felt heavier. And when Daniel raised his eyes, he saw it. A shadow swallowing the sky. At first he thought it was another storm, clouds gathering after the chaos. But no, this shadow had shaped lines, towers, cannons the size of mountains. It was not a storm, it was a ship. The Jari fortress descended slowly, its engines rumbling like thunder. It was larger than a city, larger than anything Daniel could have imagined. It blotted out the stars completely, a floating world of war. One alien prisoner dropped to his knees, voice trembling. The Overlord has come. Daniel's stomach twisted into knots. If the dreadnought had fallen to save them from a single cruiser, then how could anyone stand against this? The sky had never looked so hopeless. High above, inside the fortress itself. The Jari Overlord watched through a window of living crystal. His body was tall and skeletal, draped in armor that seemed to shift like smoke. His eyes glowed a cold, merciless blue. The lesser Jari around him bowed low, hissing in fear. One dared to speak. The humans resist. The prisoners have joined them. The Overlord's voice cut like a blade. Then they will suffer together. He lifted a clawed hand. With a gesture, the fortress cannons began to hum. Energy gathered at their tips, brighter and brighter, until the entire sky seemed to pulse with deadly light. Burn their hope, the Overlord commanded, and the fortress obeyed. The first shot split the world apart. A beam of raw energy ripped down from the heavens. The far side of the prison compound, the ground shattered, exploding upward like a volcano. Shockwaves hurled stone and fire into the air, tearing through walls and towers. Prisoners screamed as buildings collapsed. Marines were flung from their feet, weapons ripped from their hands. Daniel was thrown to the ground, ears ringing, body shaking, while dust filled his lungs, choking him. He forced his eyes open and saw devastation stretching as far as he could see. Hundreds lay dead. The rest ran in blind panic. And then another beam fell, and another. The fortress was not attacking. It was erasing. The Marine captain grabbed Daniel by the shoulder, hauling him to his feet. His visor was cracked, but his voice was firm. We can't hold this ground. We need to move now. Daniel staggered. Where do we go? The captain pointed toward the mountains beyond the prison. There are tunnels and shafts. If we don't reach them, none of us survive. The prisoners around them were in chaos. Some fought to break free, running into the open desert, only to be cut down by the fortress' relentless beams. Others froze in terror, unable to move. Daniel pushed through the crowd, shouting until his throat bled. Follow us. Don't scatter. If you run alone, you die. Faces turned to him, dozens, then hundreds. They listened, and for the first time, Daniel realized they weren't just following the Marines. They were following him. As the retreat began, Daniel found himself at the center of it all. He shouted directions, pulled fallen prisoners to their feet, and dragged the wounded onto makeshift stretchers. A reptilian alien stumbled, its leg torn open. Daniel grabbed the creature, threw its arm over his shoulder, and kept moving. A child small, trembling with wide insect-like eyes, cried out for its parent. Daniel carried the child in his arms until it found safety in the crowd. Everywhere, prisoners began echoing his voice. Stay together, stay close, move with him. The Marines noticed too. Their captain glanced at Daniel through his cracked visor. For a moment, even in the chaos, he nodded. Respect. Daniel had started this as one forgotten prisoner. But now, he was becoming their commander. The escape was not easy. The fortress tracked their every move. Columns of fire crashed around the fleeing crowd, scorching the earth into glass. Cannons tore apart the ground just meters behind them. The shockwaves threw bodies forward like rag dolls. Daniel ran until his lungs burned, until every muscle screamed. The mountain tunnels loomed closer, but so did the fortress wrath. Above, its massive engines shifted. The entire fortress began to move. Following them across the horizon like a predator stalking prey, the alien prisoners cried out in terror. It's chasing us. It will crush us all. Daniel forced his voice above the fear. Keep moving, just a little farther. But deep down, he wondered if they could ever outrun something that blotted out the sky. At last, the survivors reached the mountains. Jagged cliffs rose high, and in their base, dark openings gaped like the mouths of sleeping giants. The Marines rushed inside first, securing the tunnels with floodlights. Prisoners poured in after them, thousands upon thousands cramming into the narrow stone passageways. Inside, the air was damp and heavy. Old mining tracks stretched into the dark. Broken machines lay rusting, forgotten. It was not safety, but it was sheltered. For now, as the last survivors stumbled into the tunnels, a thunderous sound echoed through the mountains. The fortress was speaking. Its voice was a low vibration, like the groan of the earth itself. But inside that vibration was language, words that every species could understand. The Overlord's voice filled the world. You dare resist the chains of eternity. You dare defy the Jari. Very well. Hide in the dirt. Cower in your holes. I will tear this world apart, stone by stone. And when I find you, I will burn the memory of humanity from existence. His words echoed long after the sound faded. Prisoners trembled. Even the Marines were silent. Daniel clenched his fists until his nails cut his skin. Fear clawed at his heart, but anger burned hotter. Daniel turned to the survivors, thousands of eyes staring at him in terror. He raised his voice, hoarse but steady. He thinks we'll hide forever. He thinks we'll break, but he's wrong. His hands shook, but his words grew louder. They saved one of us, and we came back for them all. Now, they've taken everything from ESB. We are still here. We will not die in chains. A roar filled the tunnels, aliens, humans, voices of every kind, echoing together. But even as their courage grew, a new sound cut through the air, a deep rumble. The mountain shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. The walls cracked. The fortress had begun drilling into the rock, and Daniel realized with horror they weren't safe. The Overlord was coming for them. The tunnels shook like a dying beast. Dust rained from the ceiling. Stones cracked and fell, smashing against the ground. Daniel pressed his hand to the wall. It was trembling, vibrating with a terrible rhythm. The fortress was drilling. The survivors huddled together in the dark. Children clung to parents. Wounded prisoners whimpered in pain. The air smelled of sweat, blood, and fear. A voice whispered through the crowd, trembling. He's coming for us. The Overlord will bury us alive. Another voice broke in, sharper, angrier. We should have surrendered. Better chains than this. Fear spread like wildfire. Panic was about to tear them apart, and then boom! A deafening blast echoed through the tunnel. Rocks tumbled. Lights flickered. The fortress was not waiting. It was carving its way down. Daniel stood at the center of the chaos, his chest tight. Every eye was on him, thousands of desperate prisoners. Soldiers, children, all waiting for him to speak. But his throat felt dry, his thoughts tangled. He was just one man, a forgotten prisoner. How could he carry this? The Marine captain stepped forward, voice low. They believe in you. Don't waste it. Daniel swallowed hard. He forced his voice to rise. If we break now, we're dead. If we scatter, we're dead. But if we fight together, we have a chance. A murmur rose through the crowd. Some nodded. Others still shook with fear. The captain leaned closer. We'll need more than speeches. We need a plan. The Marines spread maps across the floor-old schematics of the mining tunnels, worn and half-burned. The fortress drills were boring straight down, aiming to crush them like rats in a cage. But there were side tunnels, collapsed shafts, hidden caverns. We can't outrun the Overlord, the captain said grimly. Can bleed him, trap him, hurt him bad enough to make him retreat. Daniel frowned. How? The Marine pointed to an ancient cavern deep in the mountains. Here old mining explosives, sent stable, but still intact. If we can lure the Overlord's forces inside, we detonate the cavern. Bring the mountain down on them. Daniel stared. At the map, that will kill us too. Not if we move fast enough. Not if we hold the line. The silence was heavy. Everyone knew what this meant. It wasn't just a fight. It was a last stand. As preparations began, whispers spread in the tunnels. Some prisoners armed themselves, others hid. But one group, 3 prisoners from different species, slipped away in the dark. They were tired of running, tired of fighting. They had lived under Jari rule their whole lives. To them, hope was poison. We go to the fortress, one hissed. We tell them where the humans hide, they'll spare us. Cowards, traitors but in the darkness betrayal, can grow like mold. And as Daniel rallied the survivors, he had no idea that a knife was already being prepared for his back. The drilling stopped. For one moment. Silence returned, and then screams. The tunnel walls split apart, rock exploding inward. Jari machines crawled through the gaps, metal beasts with spidery legs and glowing red eyes. Their claws tore through stone. Behind them marched soldiers, towering. Armored Jari, blades of plasma burning in their hands. The invasion had begun. Daniel grabbed a fallen rifle. The Marines opened fire. Energy bolts lit the tunnels in flashing bursts of white and blue. The air filled with screams and smoke. Prisoners who once feared to fight now picked up weapons, stones, even their bare hands. They fought like cornered. Animals' fury stronger than fear. The tunnels became a slaughterhouse. Daniel fought at the front, every nerve burning. He ducked under a Jari blade, drove his rifle into its chest, and fired until the creature fell. Another lunged at him. He smashed its mask with a rock, then dragged a wounded prisoner out of its reach. His body ached, his vision blurred. But he refused to stop. The prisoners needed to see him standing, and when his voice rose again, it cut through the chaos, pushed them back, drive them into the cavern. The crowd obeyed. Fear turned to fury. Prisoners and Marines alike roared. As they forced the Jari deeper into the tunnels, for the first time, the enemy faltered. The ground shook harder than ever. Cracks split the cavern walls, and then he appeared. The Jari Overlord stepped through the broken rock, towering above his soldiers. His armor shimmered with unnatural light. His eyes burned like blue fire. Every weapon turned toward him. Every. Hands shook. He did not raise his blade. He did not need to. His voice filled the tunnels colder than the grave. You were nothing. You were nothing. One human was spared, and now you think yourselves worthy of freedom? I will crush this defiance. I will make the stars forget your names. His presence alone was enough to choke the air. Some prisoners fell to their knees in despair. But Daniel stood tall. His rifle shook in his hands, but his voice did not. You should have killed me when you had the chance. The battle surged into the cavern. Explosives, unstable and ancient, glowed faintly among the rocks. The Marines worked furiously, wiring charges, preparing the trap. But before they could finish, one of the traitors appeared. He stepped forward, hands raised, shouting in the Jari tongue. He is here, the human, the leader. Daniel's stomach dropped. The crowd turned in shock. The traitor pointed directly at him. The Overlord's burning. Eyes locked onto Daniel. Then I will end you first. The Overlord raised his hand. Energy crackled in his palm, brighter than lightning, brighter than the sun. The cavern trembled. A rock split. Explosives shook dangerously. Daniel had only one choice: stand and fight the most powerful being he had ever faced. or trigger the explosives and bring the mountain down with them inside. The survivors screamed. The Marines shouted, and the Overlord's power surged toward him. Daniel's finger hovered over the detonator, and the cavern filled with blinding light. The cavern blazed with white fire. Daniel threw up his arm, half-blinded, heat searing his skin. The Overlord's energy swelled, a living storm inside the tunnels. Rocks split, flames rippled. The ground itself shook as if the mountain were screaming. Prisoners cowered, some collapsing, others frozen in terror. The Marines yelled over the chaos, trying to finish wiring the explosives. But Daniel's eyes stayed locked on the Overlord. The alien's form glowed brighter than the battlefield itself, his shadow stretching across the cavern wall like the figure of a god. And in that blinding light, Daniel understood one thing. If he hesitated, if he faltered even for a heartbeat, everyone here would die. The Overlord raised his hand again, voice booming. Your resistance ends now. Humanity will vanish. The stars themselves will forget your kind. The words weren't just sound. They vibrated through the stone, through flesh and bone. Several prisoners screamed, clutching their heads, blood leaking from their ears. Daniel staggered but didn't break. He lifted his rifle, squeezed the trigger, and poured every shot into the glowing monster. The blasts struck the Overlord's armor, but they vanished. Swallowed like raindrops into the storm, the alien laughed, a sound deeper than thunder. You are not even an insect. You are a memory waiting to die. The Overlord moved forward, each step cracking stone, every breath bending the air. Daniel fell back toward the Marines, voice hoarse but loud. Keep him busy, just a few more seconds. The survivors fought like demons. Prisoners hurled stones, pipes, even their bare fists. Marines fired volley after volley. Explosives detonated in bursts of flame. The cavern shook with smoke and screams. But the Overlord moved through it all like a storm through a forest. Nothing slowed him. Nothing stopped him. And yet they fought. Because one man had stood. Because one voice refused to bend. Every time, Daniel rose again, bleeding, staggering, but still firing. Others followed. It wasn't victory. It was defiance.
Ow.
And defiance was stronger than fear. In the chaos, the traitor who had betrayed Daniel crept toward the exit, thinking himself unseen. But one of the alien slaves, the quiet insectoid who had once bowed in chains, saw him with a hiss. The alien seized the traitor's arm, dragging him back into the cavern. You sold us, the insectoid rasped. Now you fall with us. The traitor screamed, struggling, but there was no escape. He vanished beneath the crush of prisoners who had lost too much to forgive betrayal. The last coward was gone. The captain ran to Daniel, eyes wide. The charges are ready. But if we blow them now, we'll all die here. Daniel wiped blood from his face, his breath ragged. Not all of us. Some can still make it to the side tunnels. Get him out. The captain hesitated. And you? Daniel's hand tightened on the detonator. His eyes never left the Overlord. I'll stay. The captain's face hardened. A soldier's understanding. He gave a single nod, then sprinted toward the survivors, shouting for retreat. The crowd began to pour into the side passages. Children were carried, the wounded dragged along, while Marines and alien slaves fought a desperate rearguard. The cavern was emptying, but Daniel stayed at last. The Overlord stood before him. Daniel's rifle was empty. His body shook. He could barely stand. Still, he lifted his chin, meeting the monster's burning gaze. Funny thing about humans, Daniel said through bloody teeth, we don't know when to quit. The Overlord raised his blade of pure energy. Forgotten and alone. Daniel's thumb pressed the detonator. The world split apart. The cavern erupted in a roar louder than creation itself. Explosives tore through rock. Fire swallowed the air. The ceiling collapsed in slabs the size of ships. The fortress above shuddered and screamed as the mountain gave way. Prisoners in the side tunnels felt the shock waves slam into their backs. Dust blinded them. Rocks fell. Some screamed, some prayed, some only ran, and then the mountain closed. The great cavern, the fortress above, The Overlord himself fall, buried beneath an ocean of stone and fire. The sound faded, leaving only silence. Hours later, smoke still choked the valleys. The fortress was gone.
Ow.
The mountain lay broken, its peak collapsed into a jagged crater. From the side tunnels, survivors crawled into the light of dawn. Bloodied, exhausted, trembling, they were alive. The Marine captain limped to the surface, eyes scanning the ruins. His voice cracked as he whispered, "Daniel." But there was no answer, only silence. The survivors gathered in silence.
How are you?
Slaves, human soldiers, children all, stood together, staring at the mountain that had become a tomb. He had stayed behind. He had given them this chance, and in that moment they understood. They were not slaves anymore. They were free. The captain turned to the crowd, his voice rough but strong. He gave everything so we could live. Not just for humans, for all of us. And I swear to you, this is not the end. We will rebuild. We will fight. Forget his name. The survivors roared, voices echoing against the broken mountain. For the first time in years, they shouted not in fear, but in defiance. From the ashes of chains, a new oath was born, deep beneath the rubble. Where fire still burned and stone still shifted, something stirred. A hand, human, bloodied, broken bud. Moving, and from the darkness came a faint, rasping breath. Daniel was not finished yet.